Hello everyone, it's Bringonthechaos Glizzy for another What If Naruto Had an Immortal Body. Naruto has been living for very long time. He gotten bored because nothing interesting is happening in this century, so he's starting dating girls from another world.
Naruto felt it permeate his every pore, every fiber of his being standing on red alert. He knew something was watching him, but at this distance, he could only sense killing intent. Directed not at him, but also at him. I don't get it. If I knew who they were targeting, it would be easy, but damn it. He was just about to consider changing into his god form when Toka piped up. All the humans were very kind, weren't they? Naruto forced a laugh, struggling to mask his discomfort. Yeah, for once. It seems they knew their place today. Toka hummed softly, taking her head off his shoulder. He felt the oddest urge to pull her back. I didn't know that the world was so kind. So fun. So pretty. Now I understand why the Mecha Squad is after me. Because whenever I appear in this world, I ruin something this beautiful. Oi, what are you? Naruto, I think it's better than I don't exist after all. That's not true. There was no spatial quake today, was there? You didn't ruin anything. Toka's hands tightened around her plushie. But that doesn't mean that there won't be one the next time I appear. Once I go back and fall asleep, I won't be able to control myself. Then don't go back. Have you ever tried it? Staying here. Just once. But that's. There are so many things I don't know. I'll teach you. I'd need food and a place to sleep. And unexpected things might happen. You'll stay with me. We can figure them out when they happen. Is it really okay for me to be alive? She looked at him, lost, confused, alone. Is it okay for me to be in this world? Of course it is. But the Mecha Squad. Humans won't want. I don't care. If they hurt you, I'll crush them. How can you say that? She burst out. That's impossible. You can't just kill everyone who. Tohka. Before her very eyes, Naruto's body exploded. The transformation wasn't controlled by any means. His mortal body simply imploded, making way for a new one. For the power of something else. A roar like the tormented souls of hell filled her ears as the grounds all but splintered beneath her feet, the presence of a strange, mighty being threatening to drive her to her knees. A hand blazed out, cutting through the storm with a wave of the hand, a violent arc of energy shooting back towards the hills and revealing the man-made god within the cocoon of white ether. There he was. Origami gawped. For a moment she'd feared she'd accidentally shot Naruto, but no, she checked the cartridge and realized she hadn't. The blonde had simply exploded all on his own body tearing itself apart beneath some strange and unseen power. Now, she felt herself tremble. Her entire body convulsed as a white-hot jet of air blasted over her head with enough force to nearly rip her from her prone position and, obliterating an acre of forested mountain at her back. Tobichi didn't even notice. No, her eye was focused on the lens. She was looking at a spirit. In reality it was anything but, she had no way of knowing. Her mind jumped to, what she believed, was the most logical conclusion. Naruto was a spirit. All this time he'd deceived her, fooled her, made her think he was human. And now he'd shed his true form. No. Not Naruto. Her mind gawped at the gaping crater at the scene unfolding only a few miles away, closer than air through the rifle's sight. Only one word came to mind as the creature came into view. What? What? Toka stared at God and he stared back. Eyes the color of azure flames blazed back at her, long, sharp, crimson horns. Kagaya's horns sprouted from his long, golden pale hair. His vestments were white flames, rippling and crackling around the student uniform he wore. In his hand he clutched a black staff, 6 spheres swirling wildly around it. She could scarce stand to look at him, such was his brilliance. Despite herself, Toka squeaked. Naruto. You. And then he spoke. Do you see this? His voice reverberated like unholy thunder in her ears, threatening to split the very heavens themselves with its might. It felt as though Kami himself had come down from the cloud, just to speak to her. Do you? I am a god. Nothing can hurt you if I don't allow it, you hear me? I won't let anything happen to you. Now, he raised his right arm, fingers splayed outwards to her, a beacon of light offering her that which she craved most. Hope. Take my hand. Stay with me. That's all you have to do. Toka's eyes got really big. No one had ever said those words to her. Ever. She'd never dreamed of hearing them until a moment ago, and now that dream had come true. Take my hand. Stay with me. Tears welled up in those bright, violet eyes. Gathering, stubbornly refusing to fall. She was so happy. So happy she could cry. And yet, some small part of her still quailed, terrified of the unknown. Was he telling the truth? But even if you say that, it doesn't matter. He shouted. No matter how many times this world rejects you, I never will. Now take my goddamn hand so we can finish our date. Naruto. Slowly, tentatively her hand reached for his. He didn't move. Her fingers curled forward, hesitant. He didn't budge. Then finally her hand found his, holding tight. Naruto grinned. That was all it took for the last of her resistance to break, the last brick in her wall of anxiety crumbling to dust and blowing away on the wind. Naruto. A great, heaving sob tore its way out of her chest as she fell into his arms, crying. Naruto. Words deserted her as she sobbed into his shoulder. See. Everything's alright, oh, bugger. Wait, why was he yanking her forward? Then the shot rang out. Blood spattered. A body fell. What? Toka stood there in disbelief, blood on her visage, quivering. Her hands rose slowly, fingers a-tremble. She gazed down at the broken body at her feet, the decimated plushie bearing a gaping hole where her face had been, where his face had been, because now it was. It was. Nah. Naruto. No answer. Then she screamed. Origami felt the rifle clatter from her fingertips. Numbed, she sank to her knees, staring blankly at the slumping, bloody body in the distance. Dimly from somewhere very far away, she was aware of her superior shouting at her. But it all sounded so fuzzy, as though it weren't real, as though it were all a dream. Why, oh why couldn't it be a dream? Origami. 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 She was a monster. A murderer. A killer. She'd shot him and now he was dead. Her mind shut down, refusing to accept it. No. I didn't mean to. She'd been aiming for Princess. And he'd. How could he just? Oi. Her eyes snapped up a heartbeat before the shadow fell over her. Uzumaki Naruto glowered down at her, unholy in his wrath, a hole in his head. Even as she looked on, that hole closed, the wound slithering shut almost instantaneously before her very eyes, the decimated half of his face becoming whole and clean once more, revealing his eyes. Those angry, blazing white eyes. Origami-chan. His teeth clenched, angry fangs bared in a rictus of a snarl. You should be grateful I'm such a nice guy. That angry, alien growl of a voice sent shivers of dread shooting down her spine. I'll forgive you for mistaking me as a spirit and shooting me. This time. They both knew that was a lie, who she'd really been aiming for, yet she couldn't bring herself to protest. Still, you've gone and upset Toka-chan. Ruined her date. So, now. The fingers of his right hand drew back, clenching into a fist. Clench your teeth. Then he hit her so hard she flew into the sea. Toka watched the flying specks shoot into the distance and marveled at them. One by one Naruto ruthlessly and systematically smacked the ass troopers into the sea. He was careful about it, mind you. There wasn't enough force to kill them, but just enough to make moving in painful hell. In the blink of an eye it was over and he was back again, standing at her side. Needless to say, she bolted to him. Naruto. 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 Are you? Fine, fine, I'm just fine. The godly shinobi waved her concern away with a silly smile as she sobbed against his chest. Just disposing of the trash. They won't be bothering us for a while. But you. Shot. She sputtered incoherently in his arms. How was he alive? Yes, I'm fairly certain I remember that. But. Toka felt her eyes spin dizzily. She wasn't sure she entirely understood what had happened anymore. One moment Naruto had been holding her, embracing her, soothing all her fears. The next, he'd dropped dead from a round through the head. He'd frightened her so badly that she'd changed back into her spirit armor, but by the time he was already cleaning house. Now he stood before her, happy and resplendent, without so much as a care in the world. Are you sure you're okay? In the end her hands betrayed her, seeking his face and his forehead, those places where a gaping hole should still reside. You're really not hurt anywhere, are you? The Mecha squad didn't do anything to you. Naruto sputtered quietly, his face slowly turning red as he returned to normal. In the end that was what decided it. Toka blinked, baffled as he took her hand in his. There's one last thing I want to give you, he said slowly, tipping her chin upward with his unclaimed hand. To commemorate our date. But only if you want me to. What? A kiss. There was a silence. And then. What's a kiss? Toka cocked her head to the right. Are you kidding me? Naruto face vaulted so hard that the ground actually cracked, a portion of the cliff falling away to tumble into the forest below. The god and spirit watched it fall away, and the former chuckled nervously. He stepped closer to her, until she was forced to look up at him just to meet his gaze. His face inched closer to hers. Ah. Toka knew what this was now. She'd seen all kinds of people kissing today. What had someone said about it? Gah, she couldn't remember. She hadn't been listening very well. And oddly enough, her body felt very warm against him now. A kiss is where you put your lips together and. Like this. She jerked her face upward before he could finish. Naruto guffawed, his laughter cut brutally short by her mouth. To MMPH. His lips touched hers. Fireworks. There could be no other word for the sudden burst of power and emotion in his mind, like a tiny star being birthed before his very eyes. Energy flooded into him without warning, his eyes gleaming violet for a moment as he stood there, drinking in her powers. So this was what they meant by sealing her power. Whoa. His arms closed around her shoulders and drew her closer, her head tilting back to deepen the lip lock, her arms wrapping around his neck and then. Shing. HRRMM. Toka's startled gasp muffled itself against his lips as her battle dress melted away in a rush of fantastic color, leaving her naked as the day she'd been born. Her eyes bulged. They stood there for a long moment, looking at one another, balking. Naruto drew away a bit, gulping. He knew from first-hand experience what was likely to happen now, but somehow, he just couldn't bring himself to be serious about it. Oh. Wasn't expecting that. Here, I'll just give you my coat. No. You'll see. Toka squeaked and pushed closer to him, which of course, only resulted in a massive increase of cleavage against his battered chest. Now, Naruto was no stranger to seeing women naked, but something about Toka's embarrassment rooted his legs where they were, his body refusing to move despite his mind telling him this was not an optimal position. In the end he was forced to stand there, hoping that he didn't look like a gigantic pervert. As it turned out, he didn't have to worry. Naruto. Yeah. Will you take me out on another date, soon? She looked up at him, pleading. This grin, he thought, this one, didn't feel forced at all. Of course. Anytime. Toka's smile outshone all the suns and stars in the galaxy. So did her reply. Yay. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was my first date. Honestly though, if I'd known how many more awaited me, I might have quit while I was ahead. Preview. Naruto felt his ears twitch. Itsuka. Shido. In his head, Kagaya cursed. Oh, dear. She pressed that button. Era, is there a problem, Naruto-kun? The Blackette smiled innocently, nearly devilish in her delight. You look like you've seen a ghost. In essence, he had. She was talking about someone he'd failed to save. The reason he was here, living this life. But he didn't mind that. What bothered him was thus. He'd failed. It was his greatest shame, his greatest failure. To be reminded of his failure on that miserable day ignited something in his chest, a furious fire that refused to be extinguished despite his best efforts. In spite of his legendary restraint, he found himself slowly inching toward violence. How do you know about that? I have my ways. She hummed, still holding his arms. But I don't mind. I think you're far tastier. Her tongue touched his cheek before he could think to stop her. Tasty, huh? Blue eyes flashed and in the next instant they jumped. There could be no other word for it, Kurumi thought. One moment they'd been inside the school. The next they were simple somewhere else. Teleportation. She didn't recognize the dark room, and even if she had, she wouldn't have had the time to contemplate it. Because strong hands seized her by the hips and slammed her into the wall with bone-crushing force. A startled gasp fled from her lips. Ah. An attack like that would have seriously injured a normal human. But Kurumi. She giggled. Oh, so scary, the words tumbled from her breathless lips, curled now in a slight sigh. I think I rather like this side of you, Naruto-kun. She cocked her head, calmly staring into those furious blue orbs without even a glimmer of fear. Are you going to ravage me now? Have your way with me. Her hips wriggled against him invitingly. Make me scream. I could do much worse than that. He growled. You say you want to devour me for this goal of yours, but tell me. What would you do if I devoured you? If you really want to be scary, he murmured, lips brushing her ear, you're going to have to do better than that. Much better. Do you know what I think is scary? His hand moved to cup her face, inching her visage to his. Losing control. Having no say over what your body does, being bound only to your desires, to be rendered helpless by another. To be powerless. I'm going to show you that fear. What? A lone red eye stared back at him, widening slightly now in surprise as his nose actually brushed hers then. He put his mouth there. The kiss was as savage as it was sudden, his lips slamming into hers with such force that the enamel of their teeth jarred together with a harsh click. He didn't allow her to retreat, or to advance, he simply pinned her to the wall and did just that. Have his way with her. Her clothes were suddenly gone, but she barely noticed. Her mouth parting for him with a moan, gladly granting access to his tongue, her hands shooting up to entangle themselves around both his neck. Her legs, his waist. Ah, this was it. What she wanted for long. Every cell of her body was sudden alive and aching, demanding his touch. Mine. 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 And then it ended. Abruptly, the room spun wildly around them. Her vision cleared, and she found herself standing alone in the school's hallway, gasping for breath, disheveled and still dripping with lust. Naked. Naruto's smile was telling. No. No, he hadn't. But he had. Unbalanced, she could only sputter in disbelief. He'd taken them. Her power, her ability, was gone, as though it had never been. You. That was. His smile was decidedly sinister as he threw her his coat. Turnabout is fair play. His hand split the wall mere millimeters from her face. Not so bold now, are we? If you want those powers of yours back, you're going to have to be a good girl and do what I say. That means no more killing, none of this devouring me business, none of it. Come to think of it, we should go on a date tomorrow, you and I. 12 o'clock in the plaza. Why yes, that sounds wonderful. She pouted. Well, that's not fair at all. Sorry, no fucks have been given. Kurumi had the distinct feeling she'd just been trolled.
Thanks for watching, comment 3 hearts for more.